Hello and welcome to another episode of the vCD Roundtable. After our last episode where we covered everything new around vCD 10.5, today's session is exclusively around vCD and networking and all the new good and fancy features we get with version 10.5 and some of the features which came before and which we just wanted to recap a bit and talk a bit about. Before we get started, a reminder, VMware Explore is just around the corner in a few weeks in Las Vegas and then a couple of months back in Barcelona. We'd like to meet up with everybody, so reach out to us on social media and then we can see what we can do at one of these conferences to get together. With that being said, who's on the session today? Let me get started with myself. I know that's not how you should do it, but it's the easiest way around. My name is Steve Sanford. I'm CEO of the ComDivision Group, one of the lead architects around anything service provider and cloud director in our team. I'm more focused on the business side, how we do product packaging and a bunch of other things. But also when it comes to, let's say, the more legacy designs. And with that being said, I'm handing over to Sascha for his introduction for today.
Hi, my name is Sascha Schwunk. I'm a partner and cloud architect at ComDivision, doing a lot of stuff about architecture of cloud director environments, greenfield, V2T migrations, and also the Tanzu stuff, so container service extension and so on. And I will hand over to Toby.
My name is Toby Baschek. I'm a solution architect and partner at ComDivision, main focus on the whole networking story. So SD-WAN, NSX, NSX-LB, but also on the other hand, the whole cloud director story. And I would like to hand over to Matthias.
I'm Matthias, partner ComDivision cloud architect, focusing on vCD, NSX, and the automation around those products. I love that one, legacy architecture. If you need a vCD 1.5, I'd go to E5, so sorry. Yeah, please continue.
Yeah,
1.0.
Oh, my, that old. I'm Jörg Lev. I'm a technical product manager at VMware, covering Cloud Director and all the different integrations and extensions that we have. And with that, back to you, Eve.
Good. Yeah, so vCD since version 1.0. I remember the early days. Back then we thought it's the perfect tool for enterprises and commercial. Now we think it's the perfect tool for service providers, and we try to take it away from the other ones, which I still think is a mistake. But anyways, nevertheless, let's talk about the networking pieces of NSX 10.5. And let me just throw out one of the items which we started to cover already in the 10.5 What's New session, the NSX Federation piece and VDC groups and everything else. So who's going to pick up that topic to be first? Because I guess it's better that I'm not talking about that one.
Yeah, and I will start. So we have now finally the whole support for NSX Federation. So what does this mean? On one hand, we have now the ability to import more than one NSX manager into our vCD environment. What is not really 100% true, because at the end, we need to have the whole federation configured outside of our Cloud Director environment. And then we need just to import the global federation manager node to our vCD, and vCD will now be able to discover, hey, okay, this is a federated environment, and he can then utilize the NSX Federation environment in his data center groups. And this is already one important part. What we need, and to be fair, we need it mainly since NSX T, or now the final name is just NSX 4, is there to be able to utilize the distributed firewall and stuff like this. So we need to go with a clear data center group, absolutely independent if we just have one OVDC or if we have multiple organization virtual data centers. Federation also is only supported if we have the ability to utilize data center groups and NSX Federation. There is one limitation, let's call it limitation. We can only have, at the moment, we can only have up to 4 NSX manager instances in a single virtual data center group, which means more than 4 locations with managed by dedicated NSX environments are currently not supported inside Cloud Director. I'm not really have the limit out of my head what is supported from an NSXT perspective, but I have something in mind up to 8. I think up to 8 environments are currently supported in Federation from an NSX point of view, from a Cloud Director point of view. In a single organization VDC, we can have up to 4 NSX manager instances. So we have now a clear possibility to really support availability groups, fully separated, not what we have done mainly in the past, saying, okay, we have our regions and we have our availability zones, but at the end we have just a single NSX environment stretched across the regions, stretched across availability zones. We can now really have dedicated environments in each region, in each availability zone, and then have the global NSX Federation supported inside Cloud Director. So that's the starting point, and from my perspective, one of the biggest improvements regarding the whole networking story in 10.5. Sasha, would you like to add something?
No, I think, yeah, Federation, you said all about it, and it will become very interesting for most of the customers. I want to add the part that NSX Advanced Load Balancer, so now with 10.5, we have the self-service HTTP policies so that tenants or customers can manage their own policies. So with the starting of NSX ALB, we had it still as a provider managed service. So the provider can configure all the HTTP policies, but now with 10.5, all tenants are able to configure their own HTTP policies over Cloud Director. And I think that is a very important part and the first step to really use the load balancer with more features than only load balancing. Though that was a big question in the last months from customers and service providers, because many service providers said, I don't want to manage this for the customers, or I'm not able to manage all of this for the customers. And now we have it that the customer can do it by self-service. And from my perspective, that is the first step in the right direction to give the customers more options to configure their load balancers. And I hope there will become more features added to the self-service over Cloud Director from NSX ALB. Matthias.
Yeah, maybe coming back a little bit to NSX Federation, because what Toby mentioned is the whole story about availability zones. And if you have a federated infrastructure, from my perspective, the combination with vCDA enables customers or tenants to build a new product. Kind of, I can build my own self-service asynchronous replication from one availability zone to another without re-IPing my systems if I need to start to failover and stuff. I think that's an interesting new approach, especially for service providers, and repackage or provide new products kind of to their customers. So I think that kind of business thinking will change products we will see provided by SPs in the future. Yeah, in terms of additional features in the networking space, I would like to go the firewall part, because what many tenants or what service providers told me, what many tenants are asking for, how can I add an IP address into a firewall rule as a source or destination? So in the good old days, it was not possible because you just had to add the IP address into a group and so on and so forth. Now with 10.5 and the new UI, we have the ability to add individual IP addresses as a source and or destination into a firewall rule. And I think that's a really nice improvement, enabling tenants creating more granular firewall rules to improve their security. I think that adds a lot of easier management of firewall rule sets.
Yeah, there are some additional improvements in the firewall UI. That's something where we get a lot of feedback, of course, from partners, service provider partners and their customers. So, for example, it's easier to order specific rules in the firewall UI now, and just that handling gets better and better. And there's also one pretty huge improvement for when it comes to the firewall rules. So from a vCD product perspective, we are, of course, working very closely with the NSX team to, in future, adopt the tenancy capabilities or the NSX projects concept to map them to tenants in Cloud Director, but that will take another couple of versions to be released. So until then, in past, it was very hard to create some specific logging mechanisms or dashboards especially for the firewall. Now with vCD 10.5, we introduced some logging ID for a firewall rule that maps to the rule ID in NSX. And that now allows to really have some tenant-specific information in each log message that comes from the firewall. And with that, you can use your favorite logging analyzer tool that you want to create some filters or dashboards to really create some log lists just for firewall rules of a specific tenant. Very powerful and very, very often requested feature.
The last step would be having a multi-tenant logging infrastructure. That would be awesome, but you can still have one instance per tenant. That works perfectly fine.
Good. IP spaces. Who wants to cover IP spaces and the news around that one?
Yeah, so the news around IP spaces is mainly the migration UI wizard, enabling the service provider to migrate the provider gateway configured IP ranges or assigned IP addresses into the new IP space mechanism. So that's the enhancement in 10.5. Again, IP spaces, what is possible doing with IP spaces? Pretty short. The service provider configures IP ranges, which can be requested by tenants as floating IP addresses for their needs. Like I would like to instantiate a new service. I need a new public IP address. I can just request one floating IP address. Or I can just subnet certain ranges and enable customers to request IP ranges within their own Cloud Directory UI. In the past, if a tenant needed a new IP address or a new IP range, like it's either public or private, I always had to discuss with my service provider, please assign an IP address or please assign an IP range, and which cost, like you need to open a ticket, additional work, someone has to do it, work on the ticket. So it was a pretty lengthy process. And now if the tenant needs an additional IP address, just click request new and use it. And as Fabian would like to say, ka-ching, right? With the usage meter, you just charge for the public IP address or even an IP range. I think that's pretty cool. That's the whole story around IP spaces. I can just say, please use it. They're an awesome feature from my perspective. And now with 10.5, just use the UI wizard and migrate over your legacy stuff or your legacy IP management within vCD to the new IP spaces environment.
Also be aware that the latest version of the Terraform provider now supports IP spaces so that you can automate them through the Terraform infrastructure as code concept.
Yeah, thanks for that.
Good. So BGP is another topic we wanted to cover, some of the BGP changes.
Yeah, so BGP, The big enhancements from my perspective in BGP is just the ability to manage route maps and community lists from the vCD UI. In the past, those BGP features provided by NSX were consumed as a managed service. That's the nice term for it, the service provider configures the stuff, or as Eve refers to it, as fully featured API integration. Now we can use those two additional tabs to consume or to configure route maps and community lists from the Cloud Director UI. Toby, anything to add on that?
Yes, just a small limitation at the moment, because we should really have this in mind. What Matthias mentioned absolutely correctly, but please have in mind, only on provider managed gateways at the moment with IP spaces. So as mentioned before, IP as a service, we should change to IP spaces. And then we have now the capability inside Cloud Director on a provider managed gateway that, or on a provider gateway, not on a provider managed gateway, on a provider gateway with BGP enabled, that we can configure all of the enhanced BGP stuff directly in the Cloud Director UI.
So you mean a dedicated gateway?
Dedicated gateway, yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right, I think that's mainly covering the BGP part. So if you have a dedicated provider gateway or dedicated T0, you have the BGP enabled within the vCD UI, and with 10.5 you have two additional tabs. One is a community list and the other one is a route maps.
Good. What I still have on my list, I mean, I know you covered already quite a bit of the firewall rules, Matthias. Did you also already, I'm not 100% sure, the auto-configured NAT rules?
So I haven't mentioned those. So what is about the auto rules? You can, if you enable it, and of course you need to have you need to use IP spaces, otherwise it's not working. You can enable the automated rule configuration for NAT rules like source and destination NAT on edge gateways and provider gateways within the environment. That's the whole idea with it, because you can enable those rules to automatically configure NATing based on external and internal scopes. That's the idea behind that. In the past, you had to do it manually, especially and the no NAT rules were
the no NAT rule, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't. If we mentioned the part with the firewall rules UI that we can now add source and destination IP ranges directly in the firewall rules and don't need to specify IP sets before. So yeah, many times we created firewall rules and need to go back to create an IP space for that. So that's a really good improvement of the firewall rules UI in 10.5 from my perspective.
The other thing which I had on my list for today's session, and again, I'm not sure if we want to cover all the networking pieces, but someone added to the list stateless T0, why and how?
I think it was Sasha and myself. So Sasha, it's your part.
You can talk better about that. I have another part later on where we talk about V2T migration. What happens there?
What's the idea behind? So in the past, it was always only possible if you go with a T0 active standby configuration to utilize NAT configuration on your T0 gateway. This is since the release of NSX 4, which is the new name of NSXT, or the final name of NSXT, whatever you would like to call it. We have now the possibility to utilize or to configure stateful and stateless NAT directly on our T0 gateway, also in an active-active manner. So we don't need to reconfigure our T0 gateway to an active standby. We can leave it in an active configuration, but still have the capability of utilizing that on one hand. And on the other hand, and that's from my perspective, the more or the better improvement is also that we have now the capability of utilizing proxy up, and this is what Sasha will cover from the migration perspective, that we now can also utilize proxy up on an active configuration. So this is the improvement from an NSX perspective. And before I hand over to Sasha, I would like to add a big limitation I discovered last week, and this is also not 100% not related to Cloud Director, because this is, from my perspective, a big issue, and I would already call it a bug inside NSX. If you create a NUT rule, I'm really talking now about the NUT rule, because it is possible in the firewall rules, but it is not possible in a NUT rule. If you would like to configure a NUT rule, let's, for example, go with passive FTP or with passive FTP, and you would like to open a port range in your NUT rule, saying, hey, I would like to have from 50,000 up to 51,000 all of the ports open, and I would like to create a single NUT rule, which is possible in, or was possible in NSXV. This is not possible at the moment in NSXT. So if you would like to open, for example, 1,000 ports for your passive FTP, at the moment you need to create 1,000 NUT rules. Not an ideal solution. So now I'm finished. I would like to hand over to Sasha.
Just one thing behind that headline, because on top, in NSX, we now have the ability to migrate a stateful T0 into a stateless T0, which enables certain features within NSX, like also firewalling and stuff like this. Guys, you need to be careful, because the T0 is always provider managed. Keep that in mind. And the stateless T0 always requires a stateless T1. So the question is, and we need to figure that one out, is what if I import a stateless T0 into vCD and then create an edge gateway? Because that's the T1 behind the T0. So it's not pretty clear within the release notes. And just being honest, we don't know what the real behavior will be. Maybe Jörg has a few insights, maybe yes, maybe no. So be careful with the whole stateless T0 story. If you want to use stateless T0 and all these features, you need to have a stateless T1 behind that. So currently we suggest please import the segments as external networks and provide those to the customer. The whole network stack needs to be consumed as a managed service from a tenant perspective. Be careful with those configurations. And last but not least, stateless T0 is a one-way ticket to hell. If you migrate a stateful T0 into a stateless, it remains a stateless. There is no way back except of delete stuff. But if you use Terraform, that's pretty fastly done. Remove and rebuild objects. All right, Sasha, now it's your turn.
Yeah, so I want to say with the proxy up, that's very important for the NSX V2T migrations. So we don't have to go with an active passive tier 0. And that is a big benefit now for the upcoming NSX V2T migrations, though that we can work with active T0s there. And yeah, we are still doing a lot of V2T migrations. And I think, yeah, we have the migration tool. We currently have support with the migration tool. We heard that there is something with the migration tool in the future that will come out of support, so that we have no longer support for the migration tool. So I want to say it's very important to start latest now to do your NSX V2T migration. That is a very important part, that we can do the migration with the full support of VMware. with the migration tool.
So the proxy op, Sasha, just to add a bit more precision to the phrasing, proxy op is available on an active stateful T0.
T0, yeah.
So because just we now need to be very precisely on the phrasing, because that not anybody thinks like, oh, I need to use a T0 stateless for proxy op, which might not be ideal because it's again a one-way ticket to hell.
Mm. And also one last thing, because this was something Sasha and I discussed last time. Yes, you can reconfigure an active standby T0 gateway to an active T0, but please have in mind that you need to disconnect all of your Tier 1 gateways. So this is nothing which can be done quickly in place. So you need to have a maintenance window where all of the Tier 1 gateways gets disconnected. Then you can reconfigure your Tier 0 and reattach your Tier 1 gateways.
Yeah,
but that's just a minor impact. All right, cool. I think that's a bit summing up the whole networking space. A lot of cool features, especially in terms of new stuff in security, logging, monitoring, IP spaces. But again, we added a lot of topics to the, how do we call it? Managed service consumption of certain networking features. So again, always keep in mind what can be done from a tenant perspective, what needs to be consumed as a fully managed service, and create new product packaging using the new NSX Federation and create availability zones, enable customers to migrate workloads and create their own HA solutions within your own SP space. So, summing up, I assume, famous last words, some closing statements. Maybe Jörg, you want to start?
Yeah, very happy about the finally improvements in the firewall UI because that has been a lot of feedback that we got over the last couple of months. So happy to get that in. Toby?
Yeah, also thanks for your attention. And on the other hand, more than happy that more and more of the networking story becomes now part of Cloud Director or inside the Cloud Director UI. So let's see what will come in the future. Sasha.
Yeah, thank you for joining us, and we'll be happy to join you or meet you in Las Vegas. Reach out to us and let's have a meeting in Vegas.
With that being said, I think nothing else for me to add. Again, would love to welcome most of you in Vegas for individual sessions, meetings, etc. I think we covered quite a bit on the networking piece. Just to give you a bit of a heads up, in one of our next episodes, Sasha is going to cover a lot more around CSE, Tanzu, and those integrations. And we will also do a little special with Alain from our team, who is going to cover more on showback, chargeback, area operations integration, and a lot of these different things. And so we have already quite a few topics lined up for some of the next sessions. Looking forward to it. And with that being said, goodbye and hope to see you all in Vegas in a few days.